Welcome to the Birding for Joy podcast, a show about discovering and exploring all the ways birding and wild birds bring joy into our lives. Throughout Season 4, we'll be focusing our attention on simple actions we can take in our daily lives to help birds and nature. I'm Candi Lynn Fite, your gracious host and joyful birder. If you're curious about learning how you too can live a bird-friendly lifestyle, grab your favorite beverage, settle on your perch, and let's get into today's episode. Greetings, dear listeners. If you've listened to the show before, welcome back. If this is your first time tuning in, I am so happy you're here. I hope this episode finds you all happy and healthy and finding those precious moments to venture outdoors and spend time with the birds. First, let me apologize for hitting pause on releasing an episode last week. But as I was doing the final edits for the episode about avoiding pesticides for a bird-friendly home, I heard that the State of the Birds 2025 report had been released earlier that morning. After reading the key findings of the report, which were not positive, I let my emotions get the better of me, and instead of finishing the edits, I packed my binoculars, my blanket, my dog, and I went to my local park to sit with the birds under the sunshine. It's been a week, and I'm still in freeze mode. Logically, I realize that hiding away and putting my plan of action to help support birds on hold is not the answer. I know better. But I can't help but feel disheartened and, quite frankly, defeated. I also feel like every time I turn around these days, I learn about another blow to the efforts of improving biodiversity, wildlife and bird conservation, and the environment. Not only are the efforts to improve these causes being halted, but it's become blatantly obvious that a good number of people just don't care. I read yesterday a Republican lawmaker in Texas proposed a bill to dismantle the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department and the Parks and Wildlife Commission and reassign the duties and functions to the General Land Office, Department of Agriculture, and Department of Public Safety. Here's a breakdown of what the responsibilities would look like. The General Land Office would regulate Texas state parks, natural areas, wildlife management areas, fish hatcheries, historic sites, or other public land, including bodies of water. In case you aren't aware, one of the Texas General Land Office's main responsibilities is managing state-owned lands for oil, gas, and mineral rights and energy exploration. Now, the Department of Agriculture would regulate native plants, wildlife, or the conservation or management of native plants or wildlife, including hunting and fishing. And then the Department of Public Safety would regulate law enforcement, game wardens, and water safety. If passed, the law will take effect September 1, 2025. Now, why should birders or anyone concerned about bird conservation who doesn't live in Texas be concerned about the possibility of the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department being eliminated? Well, according to Audubon, Texas is critical to North American birds throughout the year, providing vital breeding, wintering, and migratory stopover habitat for 623 different bird species. Texas is the southern gateway to North America's Central Flyway, a migration corridor that leads from the Texas Gulf Coast through the heart of the continent and up as far as the Canadian tundra. Roughly 98.5% of North America's long-distance migratory birds pass through Texas. That's over 330 species. Texas plays a huge role because the diverse landscapes provide stopover habitats for 330-plus species that make that challenging journey across the Gulf of Mexico. Yes, I said Gulf of Mexico, and the country of Mexico down into South America. If the protection of Texas state parks, wildlife sanctuaries, and natural areas are at risk, so are roughly 98.5% of North America's long-distance migratory birds. If that isn't cause for concern, I don't know what is. If we want to continue having birds in our communities, our cities, our states, and our countries, beautifying our lives and providing us with entertainment, peace of mind, and pure joy, then we have to help support them by not only living bird-friendly lifestyles, but also speaking out for them and making changes within our communities. So today, I interrupt my planned content for Season 4 of the Birding for Joy podcast to bring you some important findings of the State of the Birds 2025 report. The State of the Birds report is a status assessment of the health of the nation's bird populations delivered by the U.S. Committee of the North American Bird Conservation Initiative, which is a coalition of conservation and scientific organizations. Last Thursday, on March 13th, the State of the Birds 2025 report was announced at the 90th Annual North American Wildlife and Natural Resources Conference. This new report reveals continued widespread declines in American bird populations across all mainland and marine habitats, with 229 species requiring urgent conservation action. The 2025 report comes 5 years after the 2019 study that documented the loss of 3 billion birds in North America over the last 50 years. I won't read you the entire 20-page report, but I will relay the key findings. If you want to read the report in its entirety, I will post a link to it in the show notes. Key findings from the new report show that more than 1/3 of the U.S. bird species are of high or moderate conservation concern, including 112 tipping point species. A tipping point species has experienced a population decline of more than 50% over the last 50 years. The tipping point species are assessed by their level of urgency, red, orange, and yellow levels, with red being the most endangered. The newest findings show 42 red alert species facing dangerously low populations such as the Allen's hummingbird, tricolored blackbird, golden-cheeked warbler, Wilson's plover, and salt marsh sparrow. These birds are at a risk of extinction without immediate intervention. There are 37 species listed on the orange level, such as the chimney swift, rufous hummingbird, piping plover, and evening grosbeak. There are 33 yellow level tipping point species, such as the yellow rail, Lewis's woodpecker, wood thrush, and cerulean warbler. I will list a link to the full tipping point species list in today's show notes. Now, on top of the tipping point species, there are 46 species found to be in steep decline and 71 species on a watch list. According to the report, bird populations in almost every habitat are declining. The most interesting finding regarding the habitat report was the duck populations, which have been a bright spot in the past State of the Birds reports. The newest report shows duck species have trended downward in the recent years. Marshall Johnson, the Chief Conservation Officer at the National Audubon Society, states, "Birds tell us that we have a full-on emergency across all habitats." The findings of the State of the Birds 2025 report are devastating, but it also proves that conservation, when put into practice, works. So there is hope. From coastal restoration and conservation ranching to forest renewal and seabird translocations, it shows how proactive, concerted efforts and strategic investments can recover bird populations. Dr. Amanda Rodewald, faculty director of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's Center for Avian Population Studies, is quoted stating, "When we see declines like those outlined in the report, we need to remember that if conditions are not healthy for birds, they're unlikely to be healthy for us." Now, if you'll allow me a moment to look at the state of the birds report in a different viewpoint, one beyond bird populations. Birding is a huge business. Birding is wildly popular, and over 100 million Americans are bird watchers. Can you guess how much economic output is generated by our birding community? Okay, I won't make you guess. Now, according to the study, birding activity stimulates the economy by an estimated $279 billion. Billion. That's $1 billion, y'all. Along with the recreational side of birding, which brings together people from different communities, generations, multiple regions, and demographics, birding has a huge positive effect on our mental health. By taking care of the birds, we're also taking care of ourselves. I could go on and on about this, my friends, but at this point, I've given you the key findings of the report. I urge you to go and have a read through the whole report. Have a look at the links I provided you in the show notes. Before I conclude this episode, I want to share some birding joy with y'all. As I was working on the episode, I opened my studio window and enjoyed the bird song while I worked. There was so much activity, I decided to take a woodsy walk before recording the episode to immerse myself in all the bird song and budding spring greenery. Between the Merlin Bird ID app and my own sightings, I counted 20 species during my walk. Here is a list of the birds I encountered: northern cardinal, song sparrow, white-eyed vireo, tufted titmouse, cedar waxwing, Carolina wren, field sparrow, Inca dove, red-bellied woodpecker, American goldfinch, red-shouldered hawk, American crow, white-throated sparrow, orange-crowned warbler, northern parula, Lincoln sparrow, Carolina chickadee, mourning dove, downy woodpecker, and greater roadrunner. The most surprising was hearing the deep coo of a greater roadrunner. I waited a while to see if one would emerge from the brush where I heard its call. But soon I got distracted by yet another surprising bird call, the buzzy trickle-up call of the northern parula. They are migrating through my area at the moment. I followed its call and then set to craning my neck upward to try to get eyes on it. I have the best luck with the tiny birds if I watch with my eyes first for quick movements in the trees. It took me a good while to finally spot the tiny blue-gray and yellow warbler in the tippy-top canopy of a deciduous ash tree. Had the tree been fully leafed out, I doubt I would have been able to spot it. They tend to flit from branch to branch in erratic patterns, and they're quite tricky to get binoculars on. It took me several minutes of switching between my eyes and the binoculars before I finally got one quick glance in the lenses. During the 30-minute birding walk, I managed to get some lovely bird song recorded, which is what I had playing during recording today. During the background bird song recording, you might hear my neighbor's rooster and geese, or me walking in the woods, or my chihuahua sniffing the ground. Either way, I hope you enjoy listening. One last thought regarding the subject we talked about today. My message isn't geared to be political, but unfortunately, politics and policy play a huge role in bird conservation. My message is about taking action. It's about the state of the birds, our lands, our environment, and our health. So I'm calling on the state of Texas, North American state and federal lawmakers, cities, communities, conservation organizations, and you, my fellow birders. It is time to work together to take action. I found a lot of inspiration this week from a quote I heard from Joan Baez, an influential singer, songwriter, activist, author, and artist. She so wisely says, "Action is the antidote to despair." I've been reciting her words in my head for the past few days, and I am hoping they help get myself back on track. As for the episode I skipped last week, it's uploaded for next Thursday. I promise to continue sharing the important yet easy actions we can take to living bird-friendly lifestyles. Because we're about to be at the height of spring migration, I have several episodes lined up covering easy things that we can do around the yard and home to support birds. Until next week, I wish you well and joyful birding, my friends. If you are enjoying the Birding for Joy podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe to the show. Subscribing and tuning in to the episodes allows the algorithms on the platforms to know that the podcast is providing you worthwhile content and helps ensure the success of the show. Remember, the absolute best way to support your favorite podcast is by word of mouth. So make sure to share Birding for Joy with others who might enjoy listening. That way we can continue to build a joyful birding community. As always, thank you for tuning in, my friends.